September 12th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. The United States has transitioned from summer to fall over the past week. All indicators are from in all directions indicate that the summer season has ended. We're going to give 3 examples right now. Perhaps we're going to come up with more. Number 1, we have cooler air coming in from the north. That's obvious. We have temperatures dropping. Canadian air masses no longer are producing highs in the 80s in July or 70s even. Canadian air masses are now producing highs in the 60s. Those temperatures up north have dropped significantly, but that is not enough to really bring the summer heat to an end. We have another variable also taking place at the same time, and this is really more significant perhaps. The evaporation rate has drastically gone down. This is indicated by the fact that when the high pressure area that we're under right now, that Canadian high, when we eventually end up on the back flow, back onto the south flow of warm and humid air, those dew points are going to struggle to hit 70 degrees if they hit 70 degrees at all. That's despite the fact that the Gulf of Mexico is the warmest really that it's been all summer, or close to it, and also despite the fact that we've had a lot of flooding, just the evaporation rate is just not high enough to be producing those 70-degree dew points. This means even the sun from the south, even south winds, are no longer able to produce what they were producing a mere month ago. So that's a drastic change. And of course, we have the domes of heat have disintegrated. That's due to various tropical storms and hurricanes. And they're not going to really, it's going to be very difficult. And it's not, climatologically speaking, it's really not part of the climate for them to redevelop. And if they do redevelop, it's going to be a completely different type of air mass, a different type of heat wave. Nothing like the summertime heat wave. We also have some other, another variable too, another indicator that the season has transitioned to fall, and that's that the Great Lakes has now become a magnet for low pressure systems. This happens when the water temperatures are warmer than the atmosphere, warmer than the surrounding air. That happens after summer. November is when we reach peak intensity in this, and that's really when we have what's called the November witch storms, where storms have been so strong in the Great Lakes area, they blow up, and they've actually had effects, that the impacts that they've had on various ships are similar to a hurricane. This is very dangerous stuff when you head into the month of November here in the Great Lakes. But we're starting that already, and we already have a low pressure system that has gotten stuck over Lake Michigan. There doesn't seem to be any strong jet stream to carry it out of here right now. And the low pressure system is just completely it's like a bowling ball just moving this way and that way across the lake, seemingly according to wherever the warmer temperatures are. The warmth rises and warmth expands, and low pressure air rises. It helps produce low pressure. That's why the low pressure on the map, they're generally in the summer months, there generally always is a low pressure area in the desert southwest. Now that's another thing to look into. Do we have that low pressure in the desert southwest? I would think yes. But once that leaves the weather map, that's the end. There are no longer any indicators of summer, any leftovers from summer once that happens. So here we are now dealing with a completely different season. It's a different season, and it's a completely different set of criteria to discuss weather extremes at this point. Nonetheless, heat waves continue over in northern Africa. Just to the east of Spain, we have extreme heat, which has developed over there. We have extremely above very hot temperatures, well above normal temperatures taking place over extreme East Israel and Eretz Yisrael and Southern Israel. And a lot, we have temperatures soaring well into the 90s, even higher than that, going into the hundreds. So the extreme heat, which is actually more of a September, climatologically speaking, this is more of a September event, at least in the desert Southwest, in places like Los Angeles. Not really the desert Southwest, but the Santa Ana winds tend to increase this time of the year. And it's possible, you have to look into the Middle East to see what's going on over there, to see when do the Khamsim winds reach peak intensity and frequency. That's something that would need to be looked into. The low pressure system here in the Great Lakes yesterday brought very heavy rain. As we mentioned yesterday, 2 to 4 inches of rain already accumulated during the time that yesterday's podcast was made, with another inch of rain on the way. The National Weather Service, in response, has issued flood watches and even some flood warnings for the rivers around the Chicago area, in effect all the way through tomorrow evening. Areas of rain continue around the region. As we've mentioned, it's associated with the low pressure system around the Great Lakes. High pressure comes in from Canada. Today, we have dew points, which will be dropping into the 40s. That's another fall event. That's climatologically speaking, that's something that happens in fall. In combination with temperatures in the 60s, it no longer feels like summer. Temperatures will warm back up. We're going to have a beautiful week this week in the Midwest. Temperatures warm into the 70s and eventually back into the 80s. The humidity makes a return towards the end of the week as winds become south. Here in the Chicago area, we're going to have a southeast wind. So there will be a lake influence, but, the lake isn't really going to be bringing any type of miserable weather this time of the year. Lake Michigan water temperatures are warm, and there's really not going to be much of a contrast between areas near the lake and areas away from the lake. Slightly, however, we'll see temperatures rising well into the 80s inland. Dew points will be on the rise. As we mentioned, the humidity will be on the rise, but 70-degree dew points are less likely here in the Chicago area. We will see some pop-up thunderstorms once again possible later in the weekend, and actually, it's more associated with the next front that moves through early next week, which brings the next Canadian air mass. Active weather pattern, it's going on at full force here. After we get this low pressure system out of here, we have the next high pressure system on the way, followed by another low pressure system with the cold front. We have that summer pattern, that stagnant pattern is really over with, and we're moving right into fall, and that takes us really quickly into winter. Not quickly yet. October, I believe, is the month of most the temperatures drop. The drastic drop in normal temperatures are most intense in the month of October. But we've started that descent at fierce intensity already starting this upcoming week. Up until now, normal highs have been going slightly down. We've been dropping slightly from mid-July onward here in the Chicago area. St. Louis area remained at a normal high of 89 or 90 degrees all the way through mid-August. They've been starting a gradual descent down. At this point, it's going to be more than just gradual, but the real intensity peaks really further along the line when we hit October. The Arctic air will start to build up, especially after the sun sets for the year. For the next 6 months, once the sun sets in the Arctic, solar insolation is going way down in those locations, and solar insolation continues to go down enough to decrease the evaporation rates enough to put a damper on the dew points here in the southern Midwest. Other than that, we have really just beautiful weather here. Other than the day of the cold front and the day after the cold front and the day of the cold front, those are the days either there's precipitation or a cool breeze. But other than that, we have absolutely beautiful weather across the country. This is actually the time of year when the weather is a true beauty everywhere in this country. It's totally spectacular. In the month of September, you have 12-hour days, 12-hour nights, and the weather is probably the best it is all year. September, climatologically speaking, is the absolute best. Thank you for listening. I wish everybody a wonderful day.